Hello and welcome. I am Jackie from this YouTube channel, Ask Jackie. Today I'm here with Dorothea. Or do you say like Dorothea?
Dorothea.
Dora, lots of different names.
It's all good.
If you guys aren't familiar with her, check out her channel. She's got awesome videos in English, Portuguese, and Spanish. This video we're going to do in English.
Yes.
It'll be an opportunity for you guys to practice your listening comprehension and learn from our experiences. Both of us became mothers in Brazil. So this video we're going to talk a lot about what it's like to become a mom in a foreign country, to raise children in a foreign country, cultural differences, giving birth, all that good stuff.
There's a lot to talk about.
There's a lot. Yes, if this video ends up being incredibly long, we'll split it into 2 parts. But we'll see where it goes. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about your experience? Your experience, like you became a mom.
Yes, I became a mom in Brazil, in Rio. I gave birth in the public hospital there. I came back to Brazil. I had already lived in Brazil previously, and I met my baby daddy, the father of my child in Brazil. He's actually Colombian, he's not Brazilian. But we came back to Brazil when I was 6 months pregnant. So
from Colombia.
From Colombia,
okay.
Yes. Well, kind of. I had been in the U.S. visiting family, spent the first trimester in Colombia, went back to the U.S. Our plan was actually to give birth in Argentina, but very long story short, it didn't happen, and we just decided, I was kind of stranded in Uruguay, and he was in Peru, and we were like, let's just go back to Brazil. We love Brazil, let's go back, let's just do that. It's easier. We know people, we have jobs, we know where to live, let's just go back. So we decided on Brazil, and 3 months later, my baby was born in August of 2018. Max, he is a year now, in the making of this video, a year and 3 months.
Oh.
So still pretty nene.
Pretty young. Yeah. So what was it like being pregnant in Brazil? Like what were some shocking differences that you noticed, like compared to being in the US being pregnant? And I can share some of mine, but I think you've got some good ones.
Yeah. So when I was pregnant, I spent 1 month of that in the US, but the majority of that I was in South America, split between Colombia and Brazil, most of that being in Brazil. In Brazil, I was shocked at how well I was treated.
Yeah.
Like everywhere. On the street where I lived, which was in a community in the favela, on the buses, all of the public transportation, in the lines in the grocery stores, there's the fila preferencial, and you can just zoom ahead. In every single situation where there's a line for you, which does not exist in the US.
Right.
I remember going back to the US and going through security, for example, on the plane, and just like waiting there, like, I know. Can't I go ahead?
Yeah, come on, guys.
Even as a new mom with a baby holding a child, bebê no colo, they have a special line for you, the preferencial, and there just isn't that same level of respect, I guess, in the US. You kind of feel more of like a burden, to be honest.
Okay.
People kind of look at you here in general. It depends a lot depending on the region. If it's more kid friendly, there are definitely some differences, but in general, I'd say in the US, people just kind of look at you like, should I even ask her if she's pregnant? It's kind of...
it's definitely like there's a little bit more of a distance.
Yeah.
And I think this depends on where you are in the US as well. But I know, like my first pregnancy, I did pretty much the entire pregnancy in Brazil, and then I flew back when I was 8 months pregnant. Mm-hmm. And in Brazil, it's very common, like strangers in the grocery store, like, they like
touching you,
rub your belly, like, oh, I bet it's a boy, or I bet it's a girl, or what are you having? How far along are you? They ask you all these questions. And in the States, like, no one touched me. No. It was very different.
I think it's partially, too, that in the United States, there's a big, like, political correctness issue, I guess. Yeah. Socially, a lot of people don't want to assume that someone's pregnant. Like, there's a joke that don't ask someone if someone's pregnant until they're literally like on the table giving birth.
That's so true. And I've done that.
Yeah.
And I was so embarrassed. I was at my sister's wedding, and I was like, oh my gosh, when's the baby due? She's like, I had the baby 6 months ago.
And there's a lot to be said also with breastfeeding in public in Brazil. It's like nobody bats an eye. It's so normal. It's so normal and it's so beautiful. And I think I loved that actually, that I could just breastfeed anywhere and no one, there's men, there's women passing by and no one looks twice. And here people will kind of give you looks. It's a little more taboo.
Yeah, no, I totally felt the same way. When my first son was born in Chicago, I have my dad and my brothers and everybody. I felt like I really needed to just like go in another room every time I needed to nurse
even
it.
with family.
Yeah, I was like, oh, hold on, I'm gonna go in the bedroom. And then when I came to Brazil, I remember this so vividly. I was at my mother-in-law's house and we had just arrived, like off the airplane and everything. And I could tell that he was hungry. So I'm like, oh, I'll just go in the other room. And I'm in there, like nursing. And Peter's uncle comes in and they're like kissing the baby. Like while he's nursing, I was like, oh, excuse me guys. Like,
a little privacy, please.
No big deal.
Or even a lot of I remember once I was nursing on my terrace where I used to live, but my landlady came up, and it's a public area, it's separate, it's a little bit separate from where the house, the inside.
Right.
So my landlady comes up to do some laundry, and she's like, show me your tits, show me. Like she wants to see like how bad the scarring is, if I'm bleeding, like she's concerned.
Gosh, so funny.
But she's like, let me see them, let me touch them, like how hard are they? Like she wanted to like determine how my breastfeeding was going.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, here you go. Like,
oh, that's so funny.
They're just so open and it's so normal. It's just.
I like that though.
I do.
I feel like it's like relaxed.
It's relieving.
You
it's
can,
like,
you don't have to like
this is
hide
normal.
and go away in another room and be all isolated and lonely just because you need to feed your child. So what would you say were some of like the biggest challenges of being a new mom?
Okay.
And in a foreign country?
So, that's a good question. I think the first 6 months were definitely, it's hard to say what's the most, I'm like remembering now. Post-traumatic stress disorder. What was the worst? The first month of adjusting to a new baby anywhere in the world, no matter where you are, is hard, especially when it's your first. My sister has 5 kids, and I remember calling her and just being like, how do you do it? And she just told me, Dot, the first one is the hardest. The transition from 0 to 1 is so hard because you don't know what you're doing. You're second guessing yourself. Everyone's telling you what they think is right, what's wrong. And after that, it's piece of cake.
Right, it's true. And it's like insecurity, just worry, nerves.
Worry, paranoia all the time, lack of sleep, which really messes with your head, postpartum depression, or blues, baby blues. There's a lot of factors. But being in another country, in the same way that we were just talking about how Brazil is so receptive to pregnant women, they're also so receptive to people with newborns, with babies, with children. There's a level of respect that you receive as a new mom in Brazil that I don't think I would have received here necessarily. A type of attention that was really loving and I really enjoyed, to be honest. And I also a level of security. We were talking about this, how whenever I was pregnant or whenever I had my baby with me, I felt like even though, Brazil might not have the best reputation for security in general in the big cities where I was in Rio, especially, whenever I was with my child, I just felt safe. Like no one's gonna. Yeah. In general, right? Anything can happen, but there's a level of respect. There's something to be said with society that people will look at you differently. Yeah, you don't touch like a pregnant woman or woman with a baby. Right. I mean, it could still happen, but there's always exceptions. That'd be pretty bad thing to do. Right. Pretty below the belt. Yeah. Yes, I agree. But it is hard because you don't have like the constant like family and friends and things like that, from home that you maybe would have. There's a lot of moments where you just feel so alone. Yes. Where you're just, and I can relate to that same attachment that you had or have with your firstborn that I have with mine, that it's like you're going through it all together. And even though they're so little, they're also so dependent on you. It's like you can't really have an adult conversation with them because they're not even talking yet. Right. But you still create this bond that's beautiful, but it's challenging because sometimes all you want to do is get a breath of fresh air. Yes. All you want to do is go for a walk. Like, I just want to go buy groceries. You know,
I know.
Something so ordinary becomes such a challenge. And again, I think that would be the same no matter where you are, but being in another country where they don't speak your native language, it kind of just adds a level of anxiety that normally when I was single, it was like exciting and I loved it and I was, thrilled to go out and speak Portuguese with the world. And sometimes when I was a new mom, I just was like, I need to get out, but I also don't want to see anyone, but I also need to see people. But it's like this full of world of contradictions.
Yeah, you're just so tired. I'm so tired. And we're completely generalizing here. Obviously, there's a lot of exceptions.
Yes.
But in general, have you noticed a difference between the way that Americans parent and treat their young babies versus Brazilians? Or do you think it's pretty individual or similar?
So there's a lot to be said with that. I think it varies a lot depending on the generation. Like, I think the way my parents parented me is very different. The times have changed dramatically between generations, from like our parents to how we are probably parenting.
Right.
A lot less physical punishment.
Right.
I was spanked when I was a kid.
Me too.
And it was normal. But now in the US at least, it's like, no, probably not. You don't spank your kids.
Right.
And I don't know, I feel like I had an experience in Brazil where I saw a lot of differences between the classes, because where I lived was a favela, and so I saw how they raised their kids, and I saw a lot of raised voices, heard a lot of raised voices, saw a lot of I don't want to say beating because that's kind of a dramatic exaggeration, but spanking and just yelling. And I don't know if that is so applicable to different classes in Brazil, so it's hard for me to compare.
That's true.
But I would say that Brazilians have an intensity about their culture, both in a loving way. They intensely love and they intensely punish their children at the same time. Whereas Americans in general are more even keel. Yeah,
I do think that is definitely like a class thing. Because they're the opposite spectrum.
Okay.
Is you get like the very, very wealthy that the kids are they're raised by the nannies.
True, and I saw that as well.
Yeah, I saw what was pretty shocking to me, and I think a lot of the moms have to work. And that's the case. This is a generational thing too. So the grandmas are doing a lot of work in Brazil. I would see the grandmas at the parks, the grandmas dropping the kids off at school, the grandmas doing everything basically with the kids because their daughters had to work all day long.
This is true.
So there's, and it's very much so family to family.
Right.
But I know one thing that here, I always can identify the Brazilian families just by the level of affection that they have.
Yes.
Like the kids, even when they're teenagers, will still hug and kiss their parents. Like you'll see the girls and their moms holding hands as they walk through Disney. And that is just not a typical thing that you see amongst the American families. No. Unfortunately, I want my kids to do that. I'm going to force them.
I'm an
you
American,
are Brazilian,
but I'm a Brazilian
mom.
You
will hold my hand against your will.
This is true. This is true. And in regards to the nannies, the babás, that is very normal in Brazil because it's affordable. I think in a lot of middle class, upper class families, it's just more accessible than here in the United States, where you have to be kind of uber rich to have someone living with you 24/7, taking care of the kids, cooking, doing these kind of menial chores that the stay-at-home mom does or the working mom does. Here in the U.S., there's a stay-at-home mom, there's the working mom, there's a mix. There's a lot of different there's more of a variety of moms, whereas in Brazil, I do feel like the women are in a position where they need to work. And you see that with the government as well, where they have a public creche system, like daycare, for kids starting at 6 months. You can get your child into the creche. And here, you don't start that young. You start much later.
Yeah, at 3. So it's hard. And then they have to find, there are daycare options for younger, but a lot of them try to do nannies or something, or the moms stay home until their children are old enough to go to preschool or to kindergarten or something like that.
Right.
So Thanks again, guys. And remember, if you have any questions, you can ask both of us. That's right. Bye-bye.